In September 2015, Mick and I were contacted by a lovely gentleman called Pete Lewis of Lewis Guitar Works. And he was a fan of the show, even back then, and he said, would we like to come down to Somerset and try out some of his vintage Fender guitars? How do you say no to that? So of course we went down and spent the day with these amazing instruments. The guitar that stole my heart that day was a 1965 Fender Telecaster. Wait, but that's the sound! I could play this guitar till the end of time. So the guitar blew my mind, and Pete told me that it was for sale. But, you know, a vintage Telecaster, there was just no way. So I waved it goodbye and told myself that I had read and told myself I didn't need another guitar. But for years, that guitar haunted me. So it was years later, December 2019, Mick and I filmed the Money No Object guitar rig. And I knew the guitar I wanted to film that show with was that blonde 65 Tele. So I called Pete and I said, do you still have that guitar? He said, yes. I said, can I possibly borrow it? He said, yeah, come on down. So I jumped in the car straight away and drove down and was in his workshop, and I picked it up and I knew at that moment I had to find some way of owning this guitar. And here it is, my 1965 Tele. Now, when I played the guitar, it wasn't as if the guitar was absolutely perfect. It definitely needed some TLC. Needs frets desperately. I've got questions about the pickups and the selector switch being a bit noisy. But before we go too much into that, I want to have a chat to Zach Broyles from Mythos Effects. Now, Zach isn't just an amazing pedal builder. He also knows more about vintage guitars than anyone I've ever met. Zach used to work at Carter Vintage in Nashville. So I want to have a quick chat to Zach about this guitar.
Hey mate, thanks so much for doing this. Forgive the croaky voice. I just want to find out a bit more about my guitar. Like, you know, what was going on at Fender in 1965? And is there a big difference with a guitar made sort of pre-1965 and one made just after?
So what was happening in 1965? Well, January 4th, Leo Fender sold Fender to CBS. And for the most part, not a whole lot changed in that time. The guitar started to transition over the next couple of years, but, you know, the comparison between a pre-CBS and a CBS guitar of that, you know, age gap is so minor. But small things were changing, fingerboard inlays, some stuff like that, the decal and the headstock, those sort of things. But everything else is basically the same as it was, at least when they put rosewood on the fingerboard like your guitar, at least a veneer board.
Okay, so in today's numbers, what would my guitar be worth if it was like, you know, as it was from the factory?
So your Telecaster, if it was stock, what would it be worth? It's really hard to say, but Teles of that age tend to go for anywhere from 12 to 20 grand. It's incredible. They could be more than that depending on who's asking. But yeah, that's usually around where they're sitting, at least as of this recording and what I have found online. So yeah, a very expensive, very nice guitar.
So let's talk about player grade guitars. I mean, what does that mean? What makes a guitar player grade and, you know, less desirable than what a vintage collector is after?
Player grade, I think, is starting to get thrown out a lot. People say, oh, it's player grade. When I was working at Carter Vintage, player grade usually meant it had been played a lot and the price reflected that, and it was more tuned, or going to be marketed rather, to a player, someone who, you know, weren't the rock star, they weren't the collector, they were just someone who wanted a really cool vintage instrument that had had some loving and was going to play it without worry. I think now anything less than perfect, sometimes people can say player grade. I don't think that's really fair or accurate. But anyway, what makes it player grade? Well, a lot of work being done. Refinishing, that makes something player grade. Major modifications to the guitar. Was it routed for something? You know, did that Telecaster have a neck humbucker, a bridge humbucker? Was it filled and refinished? And, you know, was the bridge changed? Did someone put a Floyd Rose on it? Like those sort of things. Any amount of modifications. Also major repairs. If the guitar had been broken, if the neck had been broken, the headstock had been broken. When those things get fixed, that usually will classify something as player grade. A lot of time, it's just a guitar that has been loved and been played and has had some work done. In that realm, I think, lives the player grade instrument.
If this guitar was all straight from the factory, you know, no modifications, truth be told, there is no way that I could afford to buy this guitar. Also, I'd be terrified of playing it live at gigs. I mean, it'd just be, you know, worth so much money. And, you know, there are those guitars that are absolutely mint, and they are historical artifacts, you know, from a point in history where guitars and the music they created was changing the world. However, this guitar has had quite a bit done to it. So at one point, it was routed for a humbucker in the neck. And that change alone means that the guitar in its current state now, the neck pickup isn't original, the scratch plate isn't original. And in 2011, Clive Brown, who's like a really famous guitar refinisher, he filled the hole from where the humbucker was, put it back to standard, and then, you know, refinished the guitar. You know, blonde was the original color. Now, the pickup and the scratch plate, they are from the correct period, but it just means that the guitar has had some work done to it. And because of that fact, the value of the guitar plummets.
When you're considering a player grade instrument, there's a lot to look out for. I mean, the guitar's finish is paramount. That and neck breaks are the most important things in determining the value of an instrument. So if a guitar has been refinished, you want to blacklight it, you want to check it out, you want to make sure it looks good, it feels good, it was done properly. There's another thing you can check for, which is overspray, which is just shooting a clear coat on top of the existing finish to protect it. Sometimes people did that if things were checking or crazing, they would overspray it and help calm that or hide it. And that happens. And then also modifications are pretty common, especially, you know, when you think about these guitars existing in the 60s through the 70s, through the 80s, when people were, you know, aftermarket pickups came around, coil splitting, all these things started happening. So you look for holes, reworked electronics, all these things. Basically, if it can be taken off or modified, you kind of need to know that when you're looking at a guitar and evaluating it. But the most common mods for a lot of guitars are going to be pickup swaps, bridge swaps, nut swaps. 70s and 80s brass became like everywhere, brass nuts, all that stuff. Refrets, which depending on how well it's done can be a bonus in my opinion and not a detriment to the guitar. And oftentimes on vintage instruments, if it was done well or from a reputable shop, it doesn't really detract from the value in a dramatic way. But what are the most important things? Like I said, if it was broken, if the finish has been completely redone or oversprayed, and how original are some of the electronics. Now, you asked, is refinish less important than original pickups? And it just kind of depends. If the pickups were rewound, if the pickups were replaced with something terrible, I mean, that's going to affect the value. But I feel like for the most part, the finish is the most important thing.
Okay, so with everything that's been done to my guitar, you know, what's it worth now? Does all that stuff basically cut the value in half?
So your guitar has had a little bit of work done. Non-original pickup, but a early earlier pickup that's been rewound, period correct guard, some non-original electronics, tuners, the refin. Does that cut the value in half? Well, the refinish does. The fact that it's done by someone reputable is important. The pickups being rewound is, it kind of depends who did it, but, it's a pretty common thing. Using original Fender parts, but maybe not original to the guitar, that is okay, I feel like. It may affect the value slightly, but it's not going to be drastic. But I think, compared to what it would be if it was in, more original shape, the value is chopped in half. And a lot of that is going to be the finish. I don't think that all those things like stacking up on top of it are going to continue to knock it down, where it's going to get dirty cheap. But yeah, all of those things kind of affect it. But ultimately, the thing with these guitars that helps determine the value is, are they good guitars? Vintage guitars are not all perfect, but when you find one that's special and find one that's magical, especially to you, the value becomes harder to quantify. And these are things you have to consider. So yeah, with all the stuff on paper, it chops a lot of the value down. But the fact that it's a special guitar, a great playing guitar, a great sounding guitar, it kind of keeps it back up. It's a really hard thing. And now it's your guitar. So sometimes those things stop to lose the importance. And that's something you learn whenever you start getting vintage guitars that you want to play and not just collect.
So if someone's shopping for a player grade vintage guitar, where do you even start?
I always try to look for vintage stuff through dealers I trust. You want to work with people you know. You want to work with people who are not going to screw you over or take you for a ride. And that's really important, especially when you're going to be dropping this kind of money. So try to work with shops who have good reputation. If you can't do that, if you're trying to do something online, send photos to people, have them check it out. If you know people at shops and say, hey, can you check out this reverb listing for me? Usually people are willing to do that. And if it's something you're trying to do in person, trying to buy something on Craigslist or Facebook or whatever, try to connect with a shop that you know and trust and ask them, hey, can we meet up at your store and have this thing checked out? You might have to pay a bench fee. Make sure it's cool before you do it. Don't ever assume that. Never want to walk into a guitar store and say, hey, I'm doing a deal outside your store. Can we check it out here? That's not cool. But talk to them first, see if it's cool, and that's going to be really important. If this is something you're going to spend money on, if you're going to invest in, if it's a vintage piece that you hope to have for years to come, you want to make sure that it's all right. And sometimes people don't know everything about what they have. They might think it's all original and not be. Or they might think it's been changed a lot and it's all original. So you need to just take the time, be patient, and have these things checked out, either in person or by someone you trust online.
Well, what about Fender custom shop and master built guitars? Let's say that even a player grade guitar is just way out of your budget. Fender custom shop, are they a viable alternative?
I think what Fender is doing now is incredible. I think they are producing some of the best guitars they've ever made, and their recreations, their replicas are so good that I think the average player wouldn't know the difference. The biggest differences between modern guitars and vintage guitars is often the fret wire. The finishing techniques can be different. Of course, modern guitars usually have modern wood. It's not as old right out of the gate. And all the other things that contribute to how vintage guitars sound and feel is a lot of time just time. So I think if you're in the market for those style of guitars, there's no better option than the Fender Custom Shop if you can't afford the vintage real deal.
So we've established that this guitar absolutely is player's grade with everything that's been done to it. Now, one of the advantages of having a player's grade instrument means that I'm not really worried about trying things out on the guitar. There are a few things I want to try, the different saddles. I want to have a look at the neck pickup. But one thing I absolutely need to do straight away is the frets.
just take the machine heads off. Right, just using the weight of the file. Still good. And you hit it from the center out. And then go down to that one, and then this one's like blunt as anything. That should, once that's gone off, so that's tight in there. Let's check that out first go. Nice and tight.
Okay, so the new frets are on. You know, everything else is as it was. I'm just going to be using a single pedal for this, the Kaluna, but I'll start clean straight into the Lazy J J20. So bridge pickup. Middle position. And the neck. And let's hear that with a little bit of love. So it sounds great. Matt's done an amazing job with the refret. It really feels wonderful. First thing I want to try is I want to change the saddles out. One thing with red is that it had this, you know, similar threaded steel saddles, although, you know, these are originals and reds was a custom shop reissue. And they sound great, but I just break so many strings on these saddles. So I had a set of KTS Titanium saddles put on red, and I love them. So I'm going to do the same thing with this guitar. I'm going to throw some saddles on, and then we're going to see how that sounds. Another really cool thing about these titanium saddles is that they're compensated. Anyone that's played a vintage Telecaster will know that the intonation can be really tricky. And there's lots of different intonated saddle pieces that you can get for a Telecaster. I've just had really good results with these type. Okay, new KTS Titanium saddles. Now I measured everything. The strings are in exactly the same position as before. So even just acoustically, it has more zing. Yeah, it's definitely changed the sound of the guitar. And it's a sound that I really like. Okay, so let's have a listen to how it sounds plugged in. Right, bridge pickup. between. And neck. With a bit of love. So I'm already liking that a lot better. Now what I need to be really careful of is that I'm not chasing Red's tone with this guitar. You know, Red is such a strident sounding instrument. Okay, so this guitar, it still sounds woodier. It doesn't sound as brash as Red. It's a little bit thicker, which I really like. Now, one other thing that I need to do to this guitar is I need to change out the electrics. So there's often has happened in shows with this guitar, where I go to change a pickup position and nothing happens and I've got to wiggle it back in. So what I want to do is just take out all the electrics and swap it over for some new electrics and see what difference that makes. That's nuts!
Have you just changed
I've just changed
switch in the pots?
the switch in the pots.
That's mad.
That's crazy! A bit of love. Okay, apart from the tuning thing, that's mad. I'm going to go and check the values of those pots and just make sure that something wasn't broken. There was an issue with the switch, right? So there was a bad contact somewhere.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Okay, so instantly what I'm hearing now, turn the Kaluna off a bit. The bridge pickup is lovely. It's almost spot on. Actually, that is, I'm not touching that. I'm not touching that bridge pickup. I think that sounds extraordinary. Flip a neck, man. 1965. Okay, the neck pickup. It's a little bit warm. It's a little bit... It sounds like it's got a little bit of the tone already rolled off on it. Again, I'm trying really hard not to turn it into red. I think what I will do, I'm going to have a think about what is next. It may be that I simply do that. So there's a mod that I do in red where I disconnect the neck pickup from the tone control that just gives it a little bit more clarity and presence. I might do that. I mean, it's really close though. But that in-between sound is killer. Okay, all right. Anyway, that's enough messing around for today. You know, I might do some other stuff to it in future. Back again. Okay, so I'll quickly show you what's going on. If I can grab that cable.
Yeah. Where are we?
This is the original. Okay, that's the original with the guitar, 1965. And it's really plays.
Really sounds good.
Yeah, it's really great. I'm really pleased with that. The problem I've got is this is an earlier pickup that I think when the guy that did the guitar, it was busted and he had it rewound.
Right.
And I really need the front of the note.
Okay.
Right? And so which this has got, that,
Yeah, the snap.
you know.
Yeah.
But here, it's...
Yeah.
It's really big bottom end, and it just gets to a point where it falls off.
Yeah.
Can you hear that? What's going on? It's really close, but it's not quite there.
I'll show you a trick. This is how I learned this from Steve Crow, my Audio Kitchen.
Right.
He tests all his stuff, and like when he's developing things, he's got this like rake thing he does.
Okay.
And if you can get the right frequency, you hit the right frequencies literally like that.
Okay.
With it. It's super simple.
Okay.
So all you do is literally just he rakes like that with the back of his nail.
Here.
Yeah, but really lightly. So you'll see. So it's like, so let it ring out. If you go, can you hear? You can hear the nail. You can hear that like that.
Yeah.
That's there. Not there.
Okay. Now, normally what I would do is I would disconnect the tone control from the neck pickup.
Yeah.
And that puts a bit of that back. However, I want to be able to play jazz on this guitar.
Yeah.
And I really need that.
Because it needs to be smooth, but with the attack there.
Yeah, well, but this can be super dark. to do the jazz thing. But if, like on red, the neck pickup has bypassed the tone control, so I don't have that on red.
Right, okay.
I just want to be able to knock a little bit when I'm doing jazz stuff. I still want, on this guitar, to have the tone control. So I still want all that lovely top end
Yeah.
on the neck pickup without having to bypass the tone control to get the sizzle.
Yeah.
Cool?
Yeah, we can do that.
All right. So you can see here, I've put the harness in.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest tonal change. That, like, electrically, the guitar just. Do you have asthma?
Yeah.
All right. It was like all of a sudden the guitar didn't have asthma anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's
yeah.
like,
yeah.
It just unreal.
But that happens. You know, it's having good components. Yeah, that's one thing you kind of got to. Like, you know, give the signal the best chance. But the biggest thing is this, not necessarily the capacitor itself. It's where it is. So it's coming off the output.
Yes.
Like a 50s Les Paul.
It's
that, and I mean,
as opposed to coming off directly from the feed from the
because
pickups.
usually you would have this wire would come down, there'll be another wire over to here, and then the cap to ground.
Yes.
So the pickups are always seeing this.
Yeah.
And you know, this does some great things, but you don't need it all the time.
No.
It's like you need a spanner when you need a spanner. You don't use a screwdriver when you've got a spanner.
Yeah.
I don't know why I even said that. Anyway, Broadcaster first came out.
Right.
That was pickups were straight out of a lap steel, so it was all wound with 43 gauge, which is about, I'm most probably going to get this wrong, but it's like, you're talking 0.006 of a mil. It's like around there. And what that does is you get more resistance per foot.
Sure.
But you don't, that isn't the same as output or volume or, so. But then they very quickly moved over from 43 on the bridge to 42. So that's what that in like sort of the 53 Tele, that classic snap.
Okay.
That's that. So all they changed was the wire gauge.
Wow.
But they kept it on the neck pickup. So that's why that's got a lot to do with why it's smoother, and also why the neck pickups always on those guitars pretty much always read more than the bridge ones, because it's the different wire.
And we're getting the more resistance to the wire. So are you saying if we change that from 43 to 42, we're going to get a lot of that?
Yeah, that is exactly. But that is the classic thing with. I mean, there's other elements, but you know that the fabled twisted teletone.
Yeah.
That's what that is. It's along with other, you know, there's big bobbins different and stuff.
Genuinely excited now.
Let's get going.
All right.
Oh wow! So it had a.
I had a humbucker in there. Yep. So this is Clive Brown. We finished this.
Yeah. Yes. Now I remember.
Yes. There we go.
Yeah. Don't want to spray. There you go.
Nice.
So this should come off pretty easily. You have to be very careful because you see that front tab that's usually bent over, and most of the time that's what happens. You can hear it.
You hear it on the yeah. That's what I did with my the neck pickup that was originally in red.
Right.
I got drunk one night and said, I just want a little bit more top end, maybe if I take the cover off.
Yeah.
Bye pickup.
Yeah. It's really hard to sort of bend them back before you take them out. So I tend to always do it from the back down the middle, and brand new blade if you can, because otherwise you'll just end up cutting yourself. Yeah, you can see it's been really well wax potted, so the coil should be like pretty much one piece. Yeah, see that it's like penetrated right down.
Wow. It's potted all the way through, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which,
Look at that!
Yeah,
Look
so-
at that!
yeah, so you can see they're kind of oxidizing a little bit. What kills a pickup, the number one culprit, is you get it less with Tele neck pickups, but you get, if sweat and stuff gets onto the top here, goes
Right.
down, you'll see rust down here. It will
Okay.
start to creep down, and that eats into like particularly these two outside points.
Wow.
And as soon as you go through the enamel,
You're done.
You're done. It's
Yeah,
just dead.
Yeah.
Because you wind these with this face on the plate, so you can't.
Oh, okay.
Usually it's just, you can just get the wax off with the naphtha, but there's quite a lot on it, so give it a little helping hand. So yeah, just a couple of wraps just to cover it all. Because yeah, also the bobbin's doing classic Telecaster, which, because the flatwork's thinner than you get on a Strat. Can you see how the bottom's going down very slightly? This is a really good example, but you know, sometimes you get them where it literally looks like someone's really sad.
Yeah.
That's on there, roughly central. Let's see. There you go. So is that 5? Yeah, 5.3 or 5.4. Let's put that in there. Squeeze down really carefully. Test it again, because most time when a Tele pickup gets broken, it's when you put the cover
put the
on.
cover back on. Okay.
Okay, so now, see, that's not moving at all, which is
Right.
exactly what we want.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Okay, so you pull that through, just leave that there.
Mm-hmm. So excited, but don't be excited. Just
Calm.
Be calm.
First 3 to 5 seconds.
It's amazing. But I might just get a little bit high to the strings.
You got that? Yeah, yeah.
This one?
I'll try do like a half turn on the treble side and a quarter on the bass.
So half turn.
Yeah. That's it.
There.
And just a
Oh,
quarter.
you hear that?
Yeah.
And a quarter.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
You there. Okay. Wow. Oh my God.
Play some stuff on like low string stuff. It's cool. Sounds really nice.
That's beautiful.
Mm.
Ah, mate.
Yeah.
Oh, dude,
Wicked.
far out, man.
Cool, so everything's in where it should be. Yeah, they're all sitting a lot better.
Beautiful, thank you.
No worries. Perfect.
You've absolutely nailed this. Finally sounds the way I've always wanted to sound.
Wicked.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Hope you enjoyed that. Thank you so much for watching. What have we learned? Well, we've learned that this is my dream guitar. It's sounding fantastic. If you're looking at a custom shop or, certainly a master built custom shop guitar, then it certainly is worth keeping your eye out for a player grade vintage guitar. They are expensive, but you just might find the guitar of your dreams. However, as Zach said, the Fender Custom Shop guitars are amazing. Red is a Fender Custom Shop guitar, and I love that guitar dearly. A massive thank you to Zach Broyles from Mythos Effects for helping me find out some more information. Also, a massive thank you, of course, to Matt Gleason of Monty's, and of course, huge thanks to Pete Lewis for selling me my dream guitar. Brilliant. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to anyone that's gone to thatpedalshowstore.com and grabbed some merch. Also, a massive thank you to our patrons on Patreon. Have a great day and hope to see you soon. Cheers, everyone. Bye.